Okay, so in today's tutorial, we're going to learn about the metal ages. I think you can already guess that we're going to be talking about different types of metals. Perhaps you remember the names of the three periods of the Middle Ages. If you do, that's great, and hopefully you also know the order, okay, because they used mostly three different types of metals during three different time periods. And now I'm going to name them and tell you the dates. You should try and think of them now if you already know them as revision. So the first period is called the Copper Age, and it occurred more or less from 5000 to 2500 BC. Copper in Spanish is cobre. It's quite a soft metal, and when perhaps you have seen it around Madrid, some buildings have copper domes, and when it rains a lot over time, the copper turns green. So perhaps you've seen a copper dome on a building in Madrid or somewhere else when you've travelled around, or you can look out for it now. There's just a little piece of general knowledge. It's not going to be in the exam, but you do need to know that the first period of the Middle Ages was the Copper Age. Okay, so the second age of the Middle Ages is the Bronze Age. Bronze in Spanish is bronce, and it took place between 3500 to 1000 BC. Now, maybe you remember what bronze is made of, because bronze is not a metal that just naturally exists, okay? It's a combination of two metals. Those two metals are copper, so from the first period, and tin. When you mix these two together, you get bronze. Why do you think they would want to mix these two metals together to make bronze? What is the benefit of doing this? This question is something I could ask in a test, so hopefully you have managed to come up with an answer. If you haven't, I'm going to tell you that when you mix the two together, you get a stronger metal. And if a metal is stronger, it's obviously more useful for particular types of tools and weapons. So this is the benefit. And the final period of the Metal Ages is called the Iron Age. Iron is hierro, and it is the strongest of the three metals. So just like bronze was useful because it is harder to make some weapons or tools or also jewellery, iron also has this advantage of being a stronger metal, therefore it lasts longer. What I want you to think about now is whether you think that when the Copper Age ended and the Bronze Age began, and when the Bronze Age ended and the Iron Age began, did they stop using each of these metals? Did they only use copper in the Copper Age, only use bronze in the Bronze Age, and only use iron in the Iron Age? What do you think? Well, hopefully you've thought about it and decided that no, that's not the case. In the Copper Age, they would be using copper tools and weapons and also using it to make jewellery, but they also use some stone weapons or stone tools. In the Bronze Age, they would continue using copper and bronze, and in the Iron Age, they would continue using all three, although different metals were better for different things. Finally, iron, when added to carbon, makes another type of metal, and this metal is called steel. You should look up the meaning of steel in a dictionary if you don't know what it is. The combination of carbon with iron makes steel, and this is an even stronger form of metal. And now for a few revision questions to see if you have understood what was explained in the previous slide, and also to help you think a little bit and see the type of questions that might enter in an exam. Okay, so the first three questions. How many ages are there in the Metal Ages? For example, I think it's pretty simple. If you don't remember it, you should go back to the first slide and find out. Number two, can you name them? Apart from naming them, you should be able to write them correctly, spell them correctly. And finally, can you name something that our ancestors could make with each metal? This question is open for you to think about, but you should try and think about the type of metal and what you think it might be best used for. The fourth question is a little bit more difficult, maybe, a bit more complicated, and therefore would usually be worth more points in a test. Which metal would be best to make jewellery? Justify your answer. Justifying your answer means giving evidence to explain the reason you chose the metal you did. The metal can be one of the three from the Metal Ages or another type of metal once you know that they had that metal at the time. Okay, so again, it's an individual answer that can be right if you explain and justify it in a logical way. And finally, question 5 in a pinky red colour, because I think it might be the most difficult of them all. What advantages are there to using metals to make things? And I've even given you a hint. A hint is a clue. Think about what our ancestors had to use before and compare them. So why do you think there is an advantage to using metals to make things? Again, when asked about your opinion, you need to justify, explain, and give evidence for your answer to be correct. Thank you for listening. I hope it's been helpful, and if you have any questions or doubts, you should ask me, obviously.